Hi, Mariah. Today I'm going to do the pizza dough, and I think I'm going to try it, and I'm going to attempt to do it in. I think I will probably do it in three segments on the video. The first is I'm going to start by doing this. I'm going to show you and talk about what all it takes. For one thing is when you're making a pizza dough, the dough only takes about like 5 minutes to mix the ingredients together, and then it takes about they say 8 to 10 minutes. After you mix it together, it takes about 8 to 10 minutes to knead it. That's when you get your hand and push it a lot to make it smoother. And after that, you let it rise, like because it's going to have yeast in it, and yeast is like baking powder and what is baking soda. It'll make it rise. So you after you knead it, you let it rise I let it rise for about an hour. Some people do it 30 minutes, some people do it an hour and a half, but the bottom line is usually you let it rise until it doubles in size. You understand as I go along, but anyway, here's the first thing is I don't trust myself to remember what I should do. So I always, whenever I get ready to do it, I just pull out the recipe. In fact, I have the recipe wrote on a whiteboard that I keep on the wall of my kitchen. And I got it two different ways. First I got it for a regular size pizza, or maybe like 2 regular size pizza. And then I decided that most times it's just going to be me eating it. So I broke that up. I halved it. And on this side of the board is where I make it for 2 personal size. So if I make this for myself, I would have enough to use it one time. And then later, a day or so later, I can make another one for myself. Okay. But now here's what's required. It always you have to have a decent sized pan. They say that it's aluminum foil does real well, but I have made it out of any kind of pan. I usually use plastic, but that's my favorite. And then a regular spoon. But anyway, it starts with flour. Now with this, you do not use self-rising flour. With when you buy self-rising flour, you can buy self-rising flour at the store. You can also buy all-purpose. Self-rising got something in it, like baking powder, to make it rise. That's the reason they call it self-rising, because it has something in it to make it rise. All-purpose is just flour. It does not have anything to make it rise. So since it doesn't have any baking powder in it or baking soda, you can use it for a lot of different types of ingredients. You can use it for a cake and put your own baking powder in it. But because it doesn't have anything in it, they call it all-purpose flour. Or some people make it short as an AP, which is all-purpose. But anyway, it calls for 1 cup and 1/4 of all-purpose flour. Yeast, then it calls for most things are teaspoon. I have a teaspoon of yeast, and this is a package of yeast. This is a real popular brand called Fleshman. This is a store brand that I got at Aldi's. It's yeast. Okay. Now it's a lot to explain about yeast. And I'm not going to go into it now. I'll go into it later, because when I start talking about yeast, it takes a long time. But the bottom line is, I'm going to use this one. And this is called instant yeast, fast rise. Well, I would tell you that a lot of yeast is just called active yeast. It doesn't use the word fast or instant. That type of yeast, it's in the same type package. You mix it with water a lot of time to make sure it is ready that is active, that is not old and it'll bubble. But listen, when you use the one called fast rising, which I'm going to use, it has the word fast rising or instant yeast. you don't have to mix it with anything. You don't have to mix it with water. You can just, it's fast cooking. You just mix it with the dry ingredients. Here is that other brand, Fleshman, and it has a word on it. Instant yeast, fast action. They say this is no difference in the taste, so I just go between this fast action and the other types. I just go ahead and use the one with, fast action, because I don't like having to mix it with water. But I explain that later, how you would use one that you mix with water. But anyway, let's go back over it. Flour, 1 1/4 cup of flour. It's on this side. What is that? Yeast, 1/2 cup of yeast. I'm sorry, teaspoon. It doesn't take a lot of yeast. 1/2 teaspoon of yeast, and only 1/2 teaspoon of sugar. 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Water is just 1/4 cup. Oil is 1 tablespoon. So I'm going to set this over here so I can see it. I'm going to get started. To go fast, to make it go fast, Mariah, I've already mixed the flour, and this is it into the cup. And I'll talk to you about flour later. There's a lot of things you have to remember when you're using flour. But anyway, bottom line is, this is a 1 1/4 cup of flour. I'm going to put it in. Here's my dishwater ready, but I don't think I put it in the dishwater. Okay, the next thing is a 1/2 teaspoon of yeast. Yeah, it doesn't take a lot. Let me cut it. I don't like to. A lot of time when I cut it, it'll start falling out. Costs a lot of money, so I don't want to waste any. But anyway, this is a 1/2 teaspoon. So I'm gonna, let me put this down. I'm gonna adjust the camera so you can see it. Okay. I hope you can see it. That's the flour in the bowl. Now I'm going to put in my yeast, which is 1/2 teaspoon of yeast. Okay, that's about 1/2 teaspoon. Just dump it in. Close my yeast. I don't want to waste any of it, as I say. Well, it's not expensive. It's not expensive. I say it is, but it's not. Okay, the next thing is 1/2 teaspoon of sugar. And here, you may not see it, there's a big container of sugar. And here is measuring cup. I'm going to get out 1/2 teaspoon. That's not a lot. Just 1/2 teaspoon of, so that's the same amount of sugar as it is yeast. 1/2 teaspoon of sugar. Dump it in. They say sugar does well with yeast. Yeast likes sugar. So it's good to mix them together. Okay, so I got the flour, yeast, sugar, and then salt. Now for salt, it only calls for 1/4. But I'm going to tell you one thing. I'm